So again, by that I mean that you need a lot more stringent understanding in terms of programming, more cultural orientation. Getting the right talent is very, very important. Right now, talent is outsourced. I mean, it's pretty much like how China and Turkey have become sort of, global warehouses for a lot of countries. So
Like, are you going to get yourself in trouble with what you're going to say now?
there's not going to be trouble, but there are certain countries or regions that are how should I put this, talent pools. So whenever there's a radio station in the UAE all looking for newer people, that's where the people, that's where you go to. Why not look for talent which is local?
Of course.
Because there are people who are dying to experiment with the medium. There we have. And the fact that I think somewhere the entire issue of cultural sensitivity also sort of gets addressed as we go along.
Not just that. I think for me, I've been thinking about this fact a lot too, that homegrown talent, they have such a reach within the community as well. I mean, a lot of these people are actually the target market that the radio station is trying to target. Therefore, not only are they aware of the cultural sensitivities, but they know and they can connect with the listeners in a way that people who come from afar and maybe have had different experiences or just a whole different mental viewpoint can't really relate to them on the same way.
So how do you expect a person who's come from about some 2,000 miles away to speak the same language that this homegrown talent can speak?
It's a very valid
point. So you're saving time.
On that point about speaking the same language, literally, one thing that I get a lot of comments on is I've made a huge effort to learn how to pronounce certain names and places. For example, Abu Dhabi instead of Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi, yeah.
And I really make a huge effort for that, and people really appreciate it. So it's really true what you're saying. Not just speak the same language, meaning be able to communicate with them, but also show that you actually are making an effort to understand their culture, their language.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, obviously another question that's I'm dying to know, and I'm sure the listeners are dying to know, is how do you manage the music or choose the music? Who manages it? Who chooses it every day for the shows?
Well, our station is what we call a rhythmic current hit station. So basically, it's a more upbeat chart music that we do mostly. So we look at we have a music department, and they look at the charts from the UK and from the US and other places around the world. Anything that's really big that that people are getting popular about, we'll play that. And they decide on the rotation, and we use something called RCS, which manages the music, and everything is kind of calculated, the whole rotation. For example, if you hear a Rihanna song right now, you won't hear a Rihanna song for X number of minutes. I wanted to say hours, but Rihanna's just quite popular right now. So you won't hear another Rihanna song probably for another hour, just to make sure that there's a spread of it out. And it's all calculated, and it's actually really interesting to see how the clocks work, and everything's kind of done based on the assumption that a person will spend this much time in the car on their way driving. It's all trying to look at listener behavior and listener patterns and plan the songs that way. It's actually really fascinating, the algorithms.
It is. Totally control C, control V to what she said. I just add to the fact that there was a time when radio presenters or disc jockeys, as they were known back then,
yep.
which wasn't the very, very glamorous metal stud wearing people who scratch tables and turntables and whatever, but they were hired essentially on their music prowess or music knowledge or understanding of music. How can you maintain a certain rhythm or a tempo, because you had to select your own music for your shows, and write that down, collect either the spools or the CDs or the cassettes, whatever the thing may be, and then get into the studio and then finish, and you've got to do things on your own. Now we've shifted from there to something which Sheena mentioned, completely automated.
Yeah.
It's rather mathematical, where each and every song is treated on a few parameters like mood, tempo. We use a jingle or a jargon called day part. So what day part or what part of the day does the song fit? Is this song, we also have sort of parameters which are very funny, like is this happy or is this suicidal? So
you don't really have a category called suicidal, do you?
You don't? You must have one.
We do actually have all our songs in different categories. For example, you have your A-list, B-list, and C-list songs. You have your brand new music that's just come out.
Super
and then you
hot
have, we have what we call spice music, which is something that's a little bit old. That's kind of like a nice treat to hear. You don't hear it very often. It comes around once in a while, but it's like it used to be a really big tune.
Golden oldie.
Exactly,
Correct.
something like that.
Correct.
So everything is categorized differently too, and that's all how it gets scheduled as well.
Sheena, you mix a few of your songs yourself, don't you? You get to choose your songs, yeah?
Just a few of them. I get to do the rewind rewind segment, which is my favorite part of my show, which is 3 songs from 1 year back in time. So
Super.
yeah, so get to pick those songs.
Is it a gimmick to sort of expand your range of audience, or is it like your own personal choice, or what is it?
It's basically just another way of interacting, and it, you know, those old songs like I was talking about earlier that just make you feel good. It's just another way, you know, in the middle of the day to just kind of have a little way back playback and just kind of get you in the groove, you know, just get you through that little hump of halfway through the day when you just need some energy.
Dirty-itis,
Yeah, exactly. So it's just something like that. And I try and, you know, I grew up listening to a lot of urban music and less dance music. And now I've expanded my taste in music quite a bit, especially the kind of music that we play on Radio 1. I love it all. But a lot of the songs that I will put in the rewind segment are not even necessarily songs that I grew up listening to, but they're songs that I know were big and a lot of people will relate to it. So you kind of have to, as much as like you want to play the music that you want to hear, you also have to think about, well, you know, what are other people going to want to hear? What's going to make them feel good right now? What kind of mood are they in? What are they doing right now?
True.
And play the songs that will kind of uplift them. So
I agree, and that's probably why it's such a big hit as well. And obviously, our youth, unfortunately, is quite apathetic. Apathetic to tragedies and big events and issues that are going on around the globe and that are surrounding them. So, for example, today on your show, when you're talking about Saddam Hussein and giving clues, and is this a way that you're trying to involve the youth more in your series?
Yeah, not just necessarily the youth, but also, for example, when I pick my clues for my competitions, I try and pick things that people will relate to who are in this region. So sometimes, you know, it's easy for me to say, okay, well, in this year, this is what happened in Canada, and this is what happened in Canada, and this is what, but nobody's going to know. Well, maybe the Canadians around will know.
Yeah.
But I try and like spread it out because we do have such a vast range of listeners here from literally all over the world. And not just all over the world, but all different walks of life as well. For example, I've got, you know, people who are, what we call them, the Jumeirah Janes, you know, who are out getting their nails done and driving around, to people who are working in the house, and just all over the spectrum. And they all have different types of tastes in music and have had different experiences that they can relate to in terms of clues for things as well. So basically just to give everyone a fair chance to win prizes and get involved in the show.
Well, you both obviously understand the UAE audience quite well with the success of both of you, and you're both very popular on the radio. I listen to both of you. And going back to our original discussion today on how to establish a strong radio presence within the UAE, how long do you feel it took for you to really establish your name and sort of gain celebrity status here in the UAE and that sort of thing? You know, this is really interesting to us. And how do you describe your personality on air as well?
All right, I'll go first. Speaking of personality on air, like I said, I had never really been trained in radio. I didn't know what I was doing when I started radio, to be honest. So all I did was the one thing I know how to do, and that was be myself. And I think for me, that was probably the best thing. Like, I'm glad nobody ever told me you should be like this and you should try this and you should act like this, because I think that's what's worked best for me, is that I'm just, like I said earlier, myself hanging out with my listeners. And that's really what those 3 hours every day is all about for me. And I think that the way to really establish this presence or to really develop the show was just through listening instead of just talking. I know I said I talk a lot, but listening to people is so important. You know, if there's a song playing during my show, which means I'm not talking on air, chances are I'm still talking to someone on the phone, because those phone lines are going crazy, and that's when I learn the most. I have people calling me up, telling me this, that, and everything, and that's how I learned. That's how I learned about the different listeners and about the community in the UAE. And sometimes they teach me Arabic. I have some callers, they'll call and they'll speak to me in Arabic. Some will speak to me in French. Some will speak to me in Swahili. And
no, really, with you.
So cool.
Well, they teach me, and I learn these things from them. And when you listen to people and you communicate with them in that two-way communication, that develops a relationship. And then those relationships start to develop a community. And I think also with social media, with Twitter, since I've gotten on Twitter, oh my goodness,
it's addictive.
The show has just taken a whole nother level. It's just gone up to another level.
Well, since you've both been, doing this for so long, and obviously with the advent of technology and social media such as Facebook, Twitter, how do you actually maintain the audience's interest and sort of keep them, if you want to call it more traditional radio rather than going online, how do you actually keep them listening to you on radio rather than turning to online mediums?
That's a bit of a trick question, very honestly. I think that's. I think every radio professional wrestles with it every time the person's got to switch the mic on and go on air and talk about it. Yeah. But I think this wrestle or this tussle will forever be there as long as radio is going to be there, and that also sort of adds to the beauty of it. But however, coming back to your question, I think there was a time when there was no social media, and radio still was popular. The only way people were able to do that, probably was on two counts. A, the right music mix. B, the right connect. By music mix, obviously, either the broadcaster has a role to play or the music manager's got a role to play. As far as connect is concerned, it is entirely the broadcaster's playground. If you choose to sit in an ivory tower and broadcast and feel all powerful, well, you will be known as that. If you choose to, like what Sheena said, you're talking to people, you're picking up on things, you are doing a sort of a quick evaluation on what's worthy enough to go on air, what's worthy enough, what's broadcast worthy, and you're making a sort of a community or a community connect, you are growing.
Yeah.
As far as fame is concerned, I am sorry, you work on radio. Fame is a byproduct the moment you switch the mic on.
Of course, yeah. So where do you both see the radio industry in the next sort of 5 years within the UAE?
It's definitely growing, and it's growing very quickly. I feel like radio, especially during the recession, I feel like radio actually gained a lot of power. As it is in the UAE, people used to spend a lot of time in their cars. So radio, for me, I always felt was a powerful medium, more powerful even so than TV. Personally.
Totally.
And I think that's unique to our region. I don't think it's like that all over the world, but definitely people spend a lot of time in the car. So radio is a very powerful medium for advertisers. And during the recession, it grew so much because obviously radio is a cheaper form of advertising than a lot of the. And I think it grew, and it was quite successful.
I feel as the industry, I think when we're talking in terms of growth, I think we should now think of having radio stations or radio frequencies that are not eating from the same pie. We need to experiment more in terms of genre. So, for example, maybe more talk shows, maybe more retro channels, maybe
more specialist programming.
Yes. Get into something which is a lot more niche. Because let's face it, there's no other place which is as multicultural as the UAE or Dubai, and the fact that people constantly have this whole craving for radio. What's the first thing that you do when the moment you sit in the car and you switch on your AC? You switch on your radio.
Of course.
And the moment you switch on your radio, you're connected.
Of course.
So let's give people a lot more choice. So 5 years from now, I just hope that the pizza goes bigger, the pie gets bigger, and people sort of experiment a lot more with genres.
With different toppings on the pizza?
Oh, yes.
Okay. We want different toppings
you're
on a
talking
larger
my language.
pizza. Yeah. It's like you said, food, it's something we can all
That's
relate
what language
to.
we need to relate to.
I like pizza.
Well, the last question that we have for you, obviously one of the most important questions for our radio students and any aspiring presenter listening to us, and who better to help us than both of you. From all your years of experience, what would be the most valuable piece of advice that you could offer to us?
I'm going back in history now.
I have two pieces of advice that I give to people when they ask me, when they say, I want to be a radio presenter, what do I do? How do I become a radio presenter? My two pieces of advice. One, be yourself. That for me is the biggest thing, because you can tell, when you meet someone and they're being fake with you, you can tell that they're fake and you don't like them because they're fake.
Because you can't connect.
You can tell on the radio as well. If someone is being fake, you can tell. Nobody wants that. They want a friend that they can chill out and listen with. And the other thing that I think is really important is to have fun. I think for me, the reason that I enjoy my show is because I'm happy when I'm on air. And I think that actually gets passed on to people who are listening, is that they feel happy because they can hear you smile. You know what I mean? Like, just have fun and be yourself. And those are my two most important things that I would tell anyone that wants to be a radio presenter.
And while you were at that, I realized that I have become extremely grandfatherly in my approach, because I thought that
we like to call it traditional.
Thank you. You're very kind. Because I think one of the first questions that I ask a lot of people who I sort of interact with and who come to me saying, I want to be a radio presenter, I ask them, what for? I think that's rather important, because about 80-85% of the time I've got the answer, fame or famous, and that is when I tell them, do not join radio.
Don't even join, yeah.
Don't look at the glamour bit of it. If you're looking for glamour, don't get into radio.
Have I missed the glamour side of this job?
You
Because
look
I don't
glamorous. What are
really
you
feel-
talking about?
No, you haven't.
You're glamorous. You're
When you-
fine.
Where's the
It's
glamour
obviously
and the
second
fame?
nature to you. so
The
don't need to worry about
GQ, the
that.
GQ is with you. When you look at me, there is no GQ. No, but then, in all seriousness, if I see the love of the medium in the person's eyes, the one thing I tell the person, just go all out and do what you can to make a few people happy, but most importantly, make yourself happy.
Yeah,
Beautiful. Well,
agreed.
they're very valuable pieces of information. So thank you to both of you. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dev Holder and Sheena Kay. This has been an incredibly helpful show. I'm telling you from my perspective, and I'm sure from the audience perspective as well. And it's been great to dig deeper, sort of into the functionality of the radio within the UAE, and have an insight to what it's like being in the radio industry here. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for our podcast series today. It's been a pleasure having you with us, and thank you so much for staying tuned. Be sure to keep up with the MCC's Facebook and Tumblr pages for updates for future podcasts, as well as making use of our coverage of the Dubai International Film Festival starting on the 9th of December. Join us next time on Inside Buzz. Jessica Rasick, signing off.